This is, I guess, the Sage's first um, video, right? So here I have with me. Do you guys want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure thing. We are the twin combination OC remixers of Pixels and Paraddidles. I'm Pixel Seth,
And I'm Paraddidles Josh. Bad time to
and
get some phlegm.
yep, totally. Uh, I mean, what I love about this Sage recording here is that we're going to be able to show two kind of senses of coming about doing remixing, right? Uh, Josh and I are habitual collaborators. And I know that you also collaborate, but I would say that your creative space is probably more doing solo stuff, right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, like so I'm used to, well, kind of. I did solo stuff for a while, and then like once my kids started getting more involved, like my daughter, I've been
Mhm.
doing a lot of collabs with her, but um, she's not here right now, so.
It, I love that this is going to be a big like familial, like, hey, do you have musical people in your family? Grab them, put them in your mixes.
Yeah, that's kind of like a shout out to to Game Set Match. It's such a great place for that because like he said, you can use anybody in your family, and I'm like, hey, Dad, do you wanna come down and record? Because he plays in an orchestra, so I'm like, hey, yeah, let's use it, guys, and it didn't happen. Maybe in a future project, but
Oh yeah, or
kind of
some of
fun.
this bangers and mash like small form compos. I
Yeah,
imagine we're gonna end up taking the reins on for that.
awesome. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and open up the. Let's see if I can do that again. Let's open up this drawing. So we're going to talk about tension and release. I called it the art of energy management, and I was told not to call it that, but I'm going to do it anyways because I think it sounds cool. Um,
It is a little bit academic when
oh,
you
it
put it
totally
that
is.
way. Yeah.
Well, my daughter said it sounds like the fart of energy management. So I was like, yes, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do.
You heard
Okay.
it here, folks. It's the fart of energy management.
All right. I mean, so the basic concept is you have like um I'll go ahead and even do it up here. I'm gonna go ahead and create like a quick chart. Let's go and do that. How do I get text up here? I think I could just double click. Well, that works. All right. So the idea is that you'll have like parts, right? Sections to a song,
Hmm.
and you're gonna want to basically have some kind of progression from section to section, right? And some of them are going to be different types of sections, and like the problem is like a lot of times I'll hear things where it's just I don't know, it feels like there's no movement in the piece, like nothing's actually happening, and um, a lot it's hard for people to describe why a song sounds, I guess, flat or it just doesn't have a lot of energy in it, which is what we're here to talk about. So the idea is that you basically want to have something that's a little bit unsettling or just awkward. And it can be either, in a part of the section, maybe in part of the transition, or maybe, you know, anywhere in the section. Like the idea is that you want to provide something that doesn't feel quite right, or it changes up what the expectations are. And then you want to resolve it in the next section. Um, Typically, I mean, you don't have to. You can actually keep building up, and then you resolve it. But at some point, the goal is to go from one place to another with a clear level of movement, and that's what I think we call energy. So the idea is you have this tension, and then you have some kind of release. Um, you guys, I think you when I was talking to you guys earlier, you had a really good way of describing it. You guys want to talk about your thoughts on it?
Yeah. I like to think of, especially for tension and release and managing the energy across a piece. I One of the best ways for doing so is to present contrast, like what you're describing about, in this section, then we're going to do something that is awkward or it breaks off from what we just did. So that when you bring, if you have A section, let's bring B section because B is different enough from A that when you bring A back, you're like, oh, that's familiar. Oh, I remember this. it maintains the interest from the listener, right? Like if music's a piece of art that you experience over time, you don't want someone getting caught on like your opening sentence and staying there. You want them to read the rest of the paragraph. You want their eyes to scan more across. You want their ears to listen. And if you create enough contrast that isn't wholly removed from section A, if section B gives you something that's like, oh, it's related, but it's not the same thing, you can kind of vacillate back and forth between the two of them. I mean, we can. Part of the reason why a lot of us old heads love the NES chip tunes, even like some Amiga and Commodore stuff, is because of hardware limitations. All you get is an A and a B looped for probably like 20 seconds. And in that 20 seconds, you have to make that stuff matter, right? This is the secret sauce for making that stuff matter.
Absolutely, and there it's like you're very limited, which actually makes it more impressive and more exciting, I think. Where, that idea of that delta, like you have very little space to actually make it sound different. I guess like if you had like a loop of like say like 4 different parts, like the fourth part would be slightly different, so that way it feels a little offsetting before you go to like to the B section.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you can do that inside your melody. You can do it inside your harmony. If you like counterpoint or aren't familiar with it, counterpoint is like all about this, like internal ways of building between two parts so that the two voices, help each other. They contrast each other. They do all sorts of that sort of thing. And I like the way that Josh puts it more than I do. I just do it. I don't have as much vocabulary about it, I would say.
Sure, and so like this is something else that we talked about is, a lot of performing musicians will have seen this. Like I've been in many bands, like whether it's like a metal band, ska band, like they're jazz bands, as well as like orchestra, marching band, right? And so like you definitely see this if you're playing live, especially if you're playing like on the fly, like you're jamming, right? I mean. You guys have seen this, I'm sure. Like you guys perform all the time.
This was the entire way we tried to write material, and in the first kind of original band we were in, is like managing tension and release in every instrument, not just the sections. Like, what are the instruments doing to do? Like, it was maybe a little too nuanced for what we were able to do at the time, but I would say we learned a lot from it. How would you put it, Josh?
I'd say, we were geared more toward, the live performance kind of scenario, while also looking at doing studio recordings. But many of the things that work in a live performance will also work when you're looking to produce something in the studio or, put a track together in the DAW. Ultimately, you're trying to create different points of interest from the beginning of a piece to the end, and then finding ways to maintain interest by building tension and releasing tension. Regardless of how you start, you want to go from something at the start to something slightly different. You don't need to make things worlds apart different. You don't need to modulate and make key changes and bump up the tempo, 60 beats per minute every time you change something. Just slight variations can create interest, which will build the energy. Anticipating the next beat instead of playing on it creates tension, can build the energy. But the most important thing is that even if different parts are doing different, if different pieces are doing different things, different instruments, different sections, they're moving in the same direction together. Otherwise, you don't keep that energy flowing. It's if you just take one example, you can build interest rhythmically by changing up the rhythm of the thing you've just, if you have an intro that's just got some straight eighth notes happening, for instance, the next time it comes around, you can add interest by removing a couple, or switching to quarter notes, or dotted quarters and eighth notes, or whatever. Small changes like that can happen. If it's on the quarters and suddenly we're on the and of 4 instead of on the 1, if everybody's doing it together, we've generated interest. Now there's a little tension. We anticipated the beat. And then we come back in on the 2, and it's, interest generated that way. Harmonically, you can, if you have this 4-chord progression, suddenly you're playing the same thing, but you've changed one of the chords, but everybody changed together. We've generated some energy off of that. Lots of ways you can do it, and I think we've got some examples we can show real quick if we're going to do it.
Yep. Let me go ahead and pull those up. As I'm pulling this up, one of the things that we talked about is making sure that, just because the song is fast doesn't mean it has a lot of energy.
Right.
It's that change. So if you have a lot of stuff going on, but there's no change, it's just fast. It's not really full of energy. The beginning might be, because you might be like, wow, this is fast, but it kind of loses it pretty quickly. All right. Let me go ahead and do this demonstration. All right. So this file I basically created just using waves, right? And I know that a lot of these are presets. I don't typically will use stuff like this in an OC remix, because I feel like it's kind of violating the submission standards to some extent. I'll typically either have it recorded or do something else. So like just be careful doing this. I'm just doing this to provide a demonstration like that. That's my main thing. Talk with us if you're not sure about viability. All right, let's make sure it's zoomed in right. So I'll go and start off playing the part, and this is really basic. And you hear that, right? Like there's not a lot of energy, right?
Right. Two quarters and a half note.
It's really basic. Let's see what that. Yep, that's literally what it's showing. It's really basic. And there's a few things we could do to add energy. Like one of them is like, so what I'm going to add here is just a snare that's basically just rolling. If you look at it, all it is just on quarter notes, I think. It's just tapping away. And I'm going to bring it in slowly. Well, not slowly, but I'm going to bring it in low volume, and I'm going to go ahead and raise it to a higher volume. And you can see it'll add just a little energy. So you can see that adds a little energy, right?
I was incorrect. It is 2 halves and a whole, but the point remains. It's 2 parts of it and then twice that part.
Right.
And yeah, the snare, just the snare by itself, bringing in a little bit of volume, huge difference, because like it's that you presented one idea and then you presented contrast to that idea, right? The snare is saying like, we're going to do this and we're going to bring it in. And the other thing's like, yeah, but we're keeping that whole thing. There's tension between the 2 instruments. It's not a lot, but there's enough coming in that as a listener, you're going like, okay, something's happening here. I don't necessarily want to stay in it, but I want to see where it's going.
Right.
Absolutely. The next part is this idea of a tempo change, right? So I'll get this a lot, especially when I'm teaching younger musicians. I'll be like, hey, like, well, maybe if you made it faster here. And that's my bad, because I shouldn't say faster, because they do it literally and they actually increase it by using a tempo change. But it does add energy, just not as much as I think you'd expect, unless, there's ways to do it, and we'll show that later. But you got to be careful with tempo changes, because that's not necessarily a huge energy gain. right?
Yeah.
And you can feel it. Like there's an energy gain. It's just not massive.
I also felt that it became harder to it felt disjointed. It felt like I lost my sense of rhythm because the meter, like the pulse of it, is not constant.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I'm doing a huge change too. I'm going from like 125 to 211. Like that's not a small tempo change.
Yeah, that's
Right.
drastic.
Yeah,
That is
that
very drastic.
that's a huge like so if it was such a huge contributor to energy, you should really feel it. And it's I mean it's there, it's not huge.
I'm not gonna speak wholly on it because I just watched uh Adam Neely's latest video as of the day we're recording this, which is about uh it's about tempo and how we interpret tempo when we hear things over time. So, I, paraphrasing the video, it's like when you hear something fast, while you're like tapping the pulse of it, there becomes a point where you start counting it half as fast because it's easier for you to keep track of.
Yeah, I
So,
totally agree with that. 100%.
and so, in trying to maintain the pulse of this as it gets faster, I'm actually in my brain trying to count it slower in the subdivisions because it's easier to keep track of. So even though we've gone faster, in my head, I'm thinking it's gotten slower.
Right. And that's absolutely true. Like I've it's funny because I was listening to some drum and bass earlier today, and I'm like, I know for sure this is like a 180 or 190, but that's not how I'm counting it
Hmm.
at all. And I just thought it was interesting. So it's funny that you should bring that up because I was actually thinking that earlier today, something very along those lines. Um,
Right? I feel
okay.
like it's, and Josh can speak to this a lot better than I can. When you're saying like, oh, make this faster, and you're realizing, oh, I'm saying the wrong thing, introduce subdivisions. Like as I'm hearing that snare instead of the tempo change in my mind, I'm hearing like, okay, it starts quarters. I'm anticipating maybe eighths, like just doubling as much as happening within the same space, and then quadrupling as much as happening, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, and that will and I actually have that later. Something like that. That actually does add a ton of energy, right? When you start like dividing, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's pretty good. All right. Like I'm gonna go to this next part. So what happens here is I'm no longer playing the note exactly on the beat. You'll actually hear it actually comes in a little bit earlier. So there's a few things that happen here. One of them is this note actually plays a little bit later. This one plays a little bit earlier, and you'll actually feel it. It actually feels a little different. Um, some of it's drastically earlier, like you'll actually see it's coming in much earlier, but some of it's actually, as you can see, it's coming in slightly later, right? So it's like this is something that I know. Hold on, I'm getting a thing saying that we're gonna lose our recording time. I might have to do this in two parts.
Totally fine.
Totally fine.
All right, let's see here. I wonder how much time we got left on.
9:45. We got 10 minutes to make our point.
All right, let's just go for it. All right, so this is the syncopation. I'm gonna go and play it. And that adds a lot of energy. I'm gonna skip over to this section because I know we're a little short on time here. But I add a little bit of noise to add a little more tension, and then I have a break here, which is kind of fun. So let me just go and play this all the way through, and then we
Yeah.
can kind of talk about it.
What do you think?
Yeah.
All right. So there's a lot going on there, and I did it on purpose because I was trying to pull in parts or different types of energy building that we just talked about and kind of put it in one place, right? Just so you can kind of hear it. Hey, didn't do tempo, but I did a lot of these other parts. And also added this pause for a good measure, just to kind of show. Just because you're adding a pause doesn't mean that you're losing energy. Actually adds a lot. I do it again here.
And crucially, the second time you do the pause, when you present the pause the first time, even though in this digital canvas you don't necessarily have reverb on this stuff yet, when you do this in a room, you feel in the emptiness the breath of the music. You feel the whole everything breathe because it's empty, and now you're hung and focused on that last thing that happened.
Oh, absolutely.
And naturally, when beat 1 comes in, you're like, oh, it's so much heavier because it was just empty.
And yeah, exactly. That's something I'll do in a lot of my, especially a lot of the psytrance songs. Is you want to get rid of everything. Like you want to get rid of all the reverb. You basically, because it's almost like your brain does tricks, like you just said, where it's like it wants to fill that gap, and it basically grabs your attention, and you're like, what? Like that's not supposed to happen. And if anything's playing, like any residual reverb, you don't get that feeling. Like you basically just want to get rid of that. And so when you're playing it in a room, it really stands out.
Right, you hear the space, and then crucially, when you do this the second time, you're subverting the expectation. I don't believe in a song you would do this build, release and build it immediately in the next measure. But if we were bouncing around between the track and like if this is the A section happening, we do a B and come back to this A. Very crucially, in that second drop, you subvert expectations and go somewhere totally different. That's also cool. Like those are those like it makes the goosebumps happen on your arms moments where you have no idea what's about to happen, and it's exciting because of that.
Absolutely. Yep, and that's what like the other thing is like if you do this early in the song, like have like a little break, it kind of, even though it's weird because like you now you've introduced that, and so now the person is thinking, is that going to happen again?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and you don't want to do it the same way that you did it the first time, because if you do that, then it's expected. Is you're like, oh yeah, I could see that coming. But it's fun when you do it like here. I did it after the full 16 or whatever grouping here. Whatever is that? 8 measures.
Mm-hmm.
Right. 1, 2, 3, yeah. So it's like after instead of like the 2 beats before, and that gives it gives this thing because you're expecting it to go right into it, and it's like it almost. Let me go back to that diagram. Right here. So when you have a release, you still have this momentum of that energy from the previous build, and you basically want to ride that a little bit. You play with it, because it's kind of fun for the user. It's like a roller coaster ride, and I think maybe I should have said that in the beginning when we described it. But yeah, this is like a roller coaster ride. Like you want the user or the listener to really like. It's like you want to play with their emotions. It sounds kind of mean, but it's like you want to play with them so they're having fun when they're listening to your song. Right?
Absolutely. And part of that, like, we're performers, so we have that natural sense of being attuned to, okay, if I do this, the audience reacts this way, and that is the reaction I'm hoping to go for. I'm going to construct toward that angle. And I feel like if you're somebody who isn't a performer, if the way that you work is in the DAW, you know what being in the audience is like because you listen to music. Even if you don't think of yourself as a musician, you listen to you have heard songs that do this. You have heard things that do it. Yeah, go ahead.
And if you are producing music and you're not listening to music, I mean, there aren't things you're listening to. If there aren't artists you like, if there isn't material you're digesting, there's a lot you're missing out on.
100%.
It's like they say about being a good writer, you've got to read a lot. If you want to be a good producer, you've got to listen to a lot.
100%. And yep, absolutely. Like I hear a lot of people not, and especially like if you're only listening to your own music or your friends' music, you're not going to grow as much. You really need to listen to like a lot of a lot of produced songs out there, because like there's some techniques and stuff that you might not be aware of that would make your life a lot easier, to be honest, and also
Totally.
expectations that a lot of listeners have.
And this is for the imposter syndrome cats out in the crowd. We see you. We know who you are. You can do this too. This is if you do this, you're not like suddenly like, oh, I'm stealing. I can't come up with ideas. This is what musicians do. This is part of the craft, and it's okay if you do it too. In fact, I hope you start doing it.
P.S. Definitely steal more. Just file off the serial numbers. And also, don't sample Square Enix.
We do have a bunch of other techniques. Like we didn't really talk about time signature. We didn't talk about some of these other concepts I know that we have on the list. We could probably be talking about this for hours. But I would say like so what we're planning on doing, at least what I want to do, and I'll go ahead and try to do this, is set up some like I guess hours where I'm going to be available just to talk about this. Sometime next week, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because I'm usually busy Tuesday, Thursday.
Sure.
And I might have to take a look at it, but basically, if anybody wants to come in and just ask questions about, you're like, hey, I have this song. What does it look like in terms of energy? Like, can we discuss it? I'd be more than glad to do that.
That's a fantastic idea. My work schedule is always kind of like pivoting and floating, but I also would love, if I'm not popping in on yours, I would love to open a separate section for the people who couldn't catch yours. There will be more events and stuff listed in the Discord. There's going to be a lot more events that are posted on the forums. The part of what we're trying to do is revitalize like where people are coming for these answers. We want to make that tide that rises all the ships. And so this is part one of hopefully many.
Absolutely. And also, if you nail this topic here, if you're able to nail this, a lot of the other things are easy to fix. This is hard because like if your composition doesn't really support this, it's hard for us to do mastering or do like sample choice or something like that would fix this. Like you can't. You'd have to go back and rebuild the whole thing.
That's true. And it's okay to fail at this. It's okay to fail at it until you get it right. And do. We're here to make sure that like when you fail, we're going to pick you back up and get you everything. We're going to try to do our best to get you everything you need to hit this the next time that you try it.
Absolutely. And just come to us on the workshop. We're more than glad to talk through it, and we want to help you guys. So, and anyways, I guess we have a few seconds left. So let's I guess say goodbye, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll
This
catch
was
y'all on the
fun.
next one.
Yeah, this will be fun. If you have any topics too, I guess we have a few that we're thinking about doing, but if you have anything, you feel free to let us know what you guys are thinking. So
We're happy to shoot for it. Matt, this was awesome. Josh, this was awesome.
yep.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, y'all. See you next time.